Every woman at one point or another envisioned themselves getting married and walking down the aisle to the right one or the one for their life. But what you didn't envision was going through a tumultuous experience of breakups that you've been through and even one that you're currently experiencing. And how could you, right? Because this wasn't something that we were expecting. No one puts into the plans and expects to go through a moment like this where you just can't eat, you're filled with nausea, and your mind is constantly spinning because the relationship was here one day, now it's gone the next, and your nervous system and body just has to adjust to the person you've loved and poured so much into no longer being around. And this is a real natural part when it comes to grieving and moving forward from a relationship. But in this video, we're going to actually talk about and really unpack all the way to the end what is really being exposed here and what you can do to actually get your spark back, your life back, your joy back, your smile back, and more importantly, your identity back. Okay. Because a lot of you may walk into videos like this and think that I need to know the next steps to move on. Okay. Like, I need to know how to do this. Right. And that's kind of what the focus is. But nah, that's not really your problem. Okay. Your problem isn't your inability to move on. Right. It's actually something else. And it's what we're going to unpack towards the end. So I'm going to keep a little suspense. Okay. Because this is something that we have to be able to really understand. So it's going to start with the letter B. All right. And we're going to break this down as we move forward into this. So stick with me. All right. I can't give you all the good sauce in the beginning, but this is really important because at this stage of your relationship and breakup or loss of connection, you've been replaying conversations repetitively. Okay. You've been stuck in overthinking, overwhelming spaces. A relationship at this point, you're not even trying to think about anything in relation to marriage or the next relationship because you're so caught up in person that has now walked away, who has ghosted you, rejected you, who maybe cheated on you, right? Like there's some level of infidelity there. Maybe it's a divorce, something along the lines that you're experiencing that has you in a very deep, sunken place. Okay. And you're not just replaying conversations, but you're constantly trying to knit and put pieces together from a missing crime scene to really understand why it happened. Maybe you're trying to understand the nervous system that got hijacked of the person that you were dating, who have all of a sudden ghosted you, avoided you, walked away from you, right? You're trying to find all of these answers that make you feel some type of comfortable about the experience and the loss. You're doing a lot of intellectualizing. You've done a lot of the research, fallen into the rabbit holes. You've done it all, right? But it just really hasn't answered the question for you. You're stalking the socials, breadcrumbing, maybe a little bit here and there, maybe caught in an echo chamber. You're still catching on to their stories and social medias to see what they're doing because they're not really giving you as much attention anymore. And it's still a craving for this answer that we haven't found. Okay. And we're just doing a lot of fighting to get through it, a lot of fighting to overcome it. And it's part of the game. All right. But this is something that I really need you to hear, especially if you're someone who's in this position right now. And it just seems like the breakup and the feeling and the tight chest, the nauseous in the stomach, okay, the pain in your body, the inability to want to get up and do, eat, be around people, okay. You're just in your dark room playing the saddest albums and the saddest songs, and you really don't feel like there's much left to give to relationships, and you're ready to throw in the towel. I just need you to hear this for a second, okay? Because the breakup isn't really what broke you. And that might be a tough thing to hear because you're like, well, Coach Sean, how can you even say that? Because I was perfectly fine before this breakup happened. So how did it not break me? And we're going to explain why it didn't in a little bit. But overall, we're going to get to the crux that it wasn't something that broke you. It just simply exposed what was already there. And it exposed it in a very ugly way. Okay. And we're going to process it and hold your hand through this. But it's really important to recognize that instead of getting more 5 tips and tricks on how to overcome a breakup, we got to recognize that at the core of this, it's not a moving on thing. It's something else. It's not another, hey, like, okay, so how can I stop being stuck on my ex for, 5 days? How can I stop replaying the conversations? How can I stop overthinking, right? It's more of something a lot deeper that we have to get to that allows us to experience life we want. All right. And I got a little story of my own. All right, especially when it comes to relationships and rejections and seeing those things in real time. Okay, someone who has experienced the loss of relationship And it was really, even in my particular case, a pursuit. And I poured a lot of emotional investment into it. It was a relationship that I was so excited for and really proud of myself of being able to lead and cultivate in so many different ways, only to come to the end and be completely crushed by not being wanted. And it really left me feeling empty, really left me feeling challenged, especially in the beginning of even the first rejection, that experience, because there's two. Okay. But this first one, that was really, really struggling because there was so much I wanted to give. There was so much I wanted to invest. There was so much I was ready to share with this person, and everything that I did right, the dates, the time, the conversations, the engagement, only to come to the end and it feels like none of it was enough. And it kind of almost left a sour taste in my mouth to figure out, okay, well, I did all the right things and I was still told that it wasn't enough and they weren't wanting, they were moving on. What more could I have done? Right. And it left me really, really in a sunken emotional place, tears in my eyes, frustration. I mean, everything, you name it, it was there. And as I went back and had, a follow up call to answer, to get an answer, clinging to a why, all the things, it really showed me and exposed in me later on that what I was really uncomfortable with was the truth that was sitting in front of me. Not because she's such a bad person or a villain to the story or anything, but because of the things that I really wasn't aware of until I experienced them through her, but also just what I really wasn't ready to face. And we color coded as a lot of anxious attachment. We color coded with a lot of therapeutic verbiage that we might learn, which again has some truth to it. We're not saying that none of that's there, but what we're really talking about are things at an identity level that gives us permission to feel as if the behaviors that we're exhibiting are not only right, but also should produce the right outcome. Okay. And it's really tough because if you go through those experiences, something similar to that or even worse, maybe it's a marriage, maybe it's a 5 year, 3 year, 2 year relationship, something along the lines like you've experienced. It wasn't just the ending of the relationship that shattered you, it was what happened afterwards, right? It was the replaying of the conversations, it was the rehearsals of the engagements. It was trying to figure out and pinpoint exactly what happened, where was the shift, and what could I have seen. You might rehearse to yourself how dumb and silly you are for not seeing it or for missing it. Okay. Holding conversations or normal conversations were really difficult for you because your mind would drift back to the very night things ended or just the context of the relationship in and of itself. Okay. You're checking the social medias 5 times a day, trying to see, is he going to message? Is he going to send something? Is this all a game and a trick and I'm just living a dream? Okay. You're almost trying to wait for things to catch up and somebody to come out with a prank camera and is like, haha, gotcha. Right. But none of that's there. And now it's not just affecting the slow trickle down of your everyday life. Okay, but now this is affecting your eating because you're not eating. You're not eating right. Okay. You're lying awake, reconstructing, sorry, conversations that already happened. Okay. Trying to figure out what you could have said differently, what could have been heard differently. Okay. Looking for the moment that you could have been someone different. It's not so much about saying and doing. It's just, man, I wish that if I was your type, if I was who you wanted, you wouldn't have treated me like this. Okay. Underneath all those statements and all those rehearsals and all of those thoughts and experiences that we just described, there is a statement that you're repeating in your head that definitely is playing a role in a lot of this happening. And it really just says, if he didn't want me, then something is wrong with me. All right, let me get that out. Something is wrong with me. Okay. And we just have to call that out for what it is. If he didn't want me, then something is wrong with me. I promise you, this says wrong. This is not a Hebrew word. All right. But if it didn't want me, something is wrong with me, right? And there's just this assumption that the person that rejected you, that said no to you, is seeing you in a way clearer light than you can even see yourself. Therefore, their decision about you seems to carry more weight than a decision you would make about yourself or others around you that are staying around you would have to say about you. Okay. And here's what matters most about all of this. Okay. Is that none of it is about whether the relationship was healthy. Okay. Or whether the breakup was fair. right? Because you might even look at it and say, maybe it made sense. And it's not that I supported it and I liked it, but maybe it's fair. They're entitled to their own opinion and they're able to do what they want. Doesn't mean I wanted it, but I can't stop somebody from not wanting to be here if they don't want to be here. Okay. It's just about the fact that a woman such as yourself who runs a business or has a successful job and career, that has friends, that has a successful life around you, making confident decisions all day long, all of a sudden from one separation of a relationship turns into someone unrecognizable. And I want you to hear this, that it's not a sign of weakness, it's actually information. And the biggest shift that you have to understand in the conversation and context to this video is that the breakup didn't create the insecurity that you are finding. Okay. And in this moment, it definitely feels like there's nothing but insecurity around you. We don't want to minimize those feelings or experiences, nor do we want to turn it into something that really isn't clicking or making sense. But if you just walk with me for a minute, we can understand that the core perspective that relationships actually have in our lives, and purpose, I should say, that relationships have in our lives, is to serve as mirrors. Okay, mirrors. Because a relationship, and especially the ending of one that we can see in the lane of being a mirror, okay, realizes that insecurity isn't put into us, right? Like the mirror that we look at in the bathroom or wherever we are isn't necessarily placing all of the blemishes on us that we see on our face or in areas of our bodies that we may not feel comfortable with. Okay. It's just showing it, right? If there's one thing in all of life that will tell us the truth, regardless of where we are, how we feel, it's the mirror. You can come into the mirror feeling like you look like $1,000,000, and what stares back at you is everything short. Okay. And so the mirror is the one thing that doesn't lie. And we recognize that it actually doesn't put the insecurity or the uncomfortability into us. Okay, it just shows it, it reveals it. Okay, and here's how we know that this is bigger than one relationship. Okay, because it's a pattern, and it's not, doesn't have to mean that it has to be a pattern through multiple relationships, as much as it is just a pattern through various dimensions of your life. For example, there is a version of you, okay, where, let's say this briefcase here represents work. All right. And at work, you look like you're doing a lot of things, being productive. It might even look like it's overworking, right? Stay late. You say yes to everything. You needing to win to feel okay about yourself. Okay. Taking every overtime, every additional paycheck. You're working multiple jobs because a woman has to do what a woman has to do. And if I don't do it, who is going to get it done? Right. And it's not to say that there isn't a time and space to, maybe put 10 toes down and make some sacrifices. But for a lot of you, you pick up extra shifts, extra jobs, extra money, because there's a part of you that is using overworking to run from something in your life. There's a survival tactic that starts kicking in. And because you've normalized this survival instinct and it's all you give yourself permission to engage in it further, not to challenge it, not to press inward, and not even to make an attempt to create relaxation, sometimes because you don't know how, but oftentimes because it's outside of the norm. And what is the norm? Survival. Okay. And it kicks in even at work. All right. What about your health? Okay. Your health is a great place where this kicks in. All right. Let's say that's your little health kit. Well, that kind of looks a little weird. So I'll do it like that. All right. Let's say it's your health. Okay. Because again, it doesn't just show up in your relationships. It doesn't have to just show up in the fact that you've had maybe multiple relationships. Some of you, this is your first time. Okay. But this is something that is exposing things that spill out into other areas. Because for your health, it might look like living in a low grade state of stress. Okay. You've just stopped noticing because calm has actually never felt safe. All right. You actually have conflated this sense of low level stress, okay, to be something that is peaceful when it really you just stop noticing. You stop paying attention. You stop being aware to what's happening around you. Okay, being present in your body, very odd. Feeling emotions and the flood of them, very difficult. There's probably a part of you right now as you're listening to this video that makes you want to get up and move and not continue hearing the conversation because of how challenging handling these floods of emotions and thoughts can be. Sitting with your own thoughts is a scary thing, to the point where you would rather go out, stay busy, be with friends every weekend, or do whatever it takes to get your mind off of reality. Okay. It's an escape, not necessarily a place of reflection, of safety. Okay. This is something that affects your body in the sense of the stress that you take on, the restlessness that occurs, and it just continues to tally on. All right. But it doesn't just stop at your work and your faith or your work and your health. Kind of spoiled it there. But it also turns into, all right, your faith. All right. And, let that be a little cross. And maybe you're watching this and you're not a believer. Okay. But there is something that you believe, something that you carry regarding your faith. All right. And your faith, it might look like trying to earn God's approval. Okay, through performance. Everything is from a performance base. We're running from something, we're clinging to other things, we're performing at work, and we're also performing in our faith. And even though you recognize that God loves you, right? And maybe you've heard the statement, God's rejection is redirection. Okay, God loves you, and that's all that matters. And in moments like this, it's like the last thing you want to hear, but it's also something that you deep down may not fully greatly believe. And don't hear me say that because you're feeling sad that doesn't mean you don't believe it. That's crazy. Okay, but what we are saying is that because of the patterns that we see this perpetually in life, it's exposing that maybe there is a greater maturity that we are being called to with our faith. Okay, because at this moment, it looks like we're really often trying to earn God's approval through performance, more discipline, more effort, more proving, more fasting, more Bible reading. Okay, I can only please God when I read my daily or yearly Bible plan, right? That's when I'm the most successful as a Christian. Okay, instead of resting in the fact that you're already loved, right? And that is something that is easily exposed in seasons like this, when we lose someone that we really really love, that we didn't really want the relationship to end, and yet it came to the unfavorable. Okay, and in your sense of purpose. Okay, so you talked about work, shows up in performance. Health, it shows up in restlessness. Okay, conflating stress. Okay, we've experienced that. We see faith. We're performing for God's love. We have yet to really rest in this abundance. And then there is purpose. Okay, and I'm just going to write out the word purpose there because I'm not too sure exactly what picture makes the most sense here. Okay, but when we're talking about our purpose, maybe a direction in life, trying to figure out what exactly we're here for. Why am I here? Okay, the sense of purpose gets disturbed because it might look like waiting, and you never thought that waiting would be something that is a dangerous space to be in when it comes to your purpose. But you're oftentimes waiting for the relationship, the man, the marriage, the legacy to actually be something that adds a level of status to your life, meaning to your life, and therefore gives you the ability to go and be someone. Okay. Waiting for the relationship, the marriage, the weight loss, or even the next milestone before giving yourself the opportunity to actually live. You put everything on hold. Okay. And you've told yourself you're not allowed to do certain things until you get to a certain place. And it's a reflection of lack instead of abundance. And if this all sounds familiar to you with what we're breaking down with your purpose, your work, your health, your faith, you've seen ounces of these things show up in your life. Okay. Realize that it didn't start with the breakup. The breakup is just simply exposing it. Okay. And it turned the volume up on something that was already loud and plain. So as we keep moving forward in this conversation, I can't let it turn into one of those things where we believe that security means that you don't feel emotions. Get that nonsense out of here. Okay. Being secure does not mean that you don't hurt. Okay. It doesn't mean that you don't grieve the loss of a relationship or that grief isn't real. Okay. It doesn't mean that you should be over it by now. It doesn't mean that we should code it with all this spiritual language and virtue signaling and therapeutic language to make you feel better. Okay. Because truth is, security makes room for all of that. Security makes room for all of these emotions, all of these experiences, and allows us to feel the heaviness of that which we're experiencing. Okay. Loss is supposed to hurt. Okay. Crying for a month over someone you loved is not a character flaw. Doesn't mean that you're in the wrong. We shouldn't move in a right or wrong, heaven or hell. Is God more disappointed than me? I'm further behind. I shouldn't be crying. I shouldn't be feeling this way. That's not what we're talking about when I say security. Okay. When I say security, here's the actual distinction. A secure woman experiences unfathomable pain like this, and through devastation, isn't uncertain about her identity and who she is. Okay. And an insecure woman experiences this breakup. Okay. And the devastation is actually revealing proof of who and what she is. Okay. The pain is the same. The difference is what is defined behind it. Okay. And I want to give you this picture to really bring this to life, because this is something that I share with clients often, that two people can have the same experience, all right, and create different results or have different results. Okay, so let's just say there's a person at the top of this mountain, okay, and there's somebody at the bottom of this mountain. Okay, forgive my stick figures, they're kind of doing the stanky leg, but we'll make it. All right. And the person at this top mountain, right, they definitely have a unique view. Okay, they can see the clouds, and they can see the landscape far and far away, right? They can see a lot of different things from a lot of different angles. That just looks cleaner, looks beautiful. It just has this aura to it. Okay, and this person up here is maybe feeling like they're on cloud nine. Climb the mountain. I'm feeling good. The view is beautiful. I wish I could just hold it here. And then the person at the bottom of the mountain, right? They can still see the clouds. They just got to look up a little bit more, right? They can still see maybe a little bit of the mountains, or the buildings, or whatever the case is that we're looking at that's further out, right? But they don't necessarily see it to the same degree that's like over top, right? Person on top can see an overarching view, where the person on the ground, right, sees a ground level view. Okay. And this is really, really important, because the person at the top, right, could be believing that they're having an exciting time. Okay. Oh, forgive my pen there. Okay. They believe that this is exciting, right? This is amazing, right? This is what life is all about. All right. And the person at the bottom maybe is thinking to themselves that this is boring, right? Or this is too much. Okay, if I wanted to see some rocks, I could have just went home and watched Animal Planet, right? If I, why do I have to climb this whole mountain here, right? Like, this is too far up. This is crazy. It's too much work. Okay, and you notice how the mountain itself never changed, right? The mountain itself never shifted, never shrunk, right? Never made one person feel more comfortable than the other to climb it, to engage with it. It was the mountain. It just stayed the same. What changed between the person that made it to the top of the mountain and the person that stayed at the bottom was the story. Okay. It was the meaning. Okay. The person that was determined to get to the top of the mountain believed that they can get there. They believed that they were capable of getting there. Okay. There was this drive and desire for them to push themselves to experience this height, this remarkable scenery, versus the person at the bottom that didn't believe that they had what it took. I'm too fat. I'm too lazy. I'm too tired. Okay. This is too long. This is too much. It's not worth my time. And the story is ultimately what leads both people to be in the position they're in towards the same mountain that both people experienced. Okay. And this is something that we have to really understand when it comes to healing through relationships, breakups, and loss of relationships specifically, is that there's two people that have the same experience but different results. And the different results is defined by the story. Okay. So just like there's one person, okay, maybe this guy up top is the person that has also experienced the mountain of the breakup. Okay. And what allowed them to get over it? Well, they were telling themselves that, hey, this is just a season. This too shall pass, right? They were reminding themselves that something good has to come out of this, even though I may not fully see it. Okay. They were believing themselves in some type of way that they were going to overcome, and that the person that they lost wasn't the only person available for God to use or to connect them with and to build a healthy relationship with, versus the person that maybe stays at the bottom because they start believing the stories that men are trash. Okay. They start believing the stories that they don't need a man, right? This is why you can't trust men. Men cheat, right? Marriage is a contract. It's not worth it. Okay. And now all of a sudden, these stories that we start rehearsing in our minds, okay, there's too many feminine men. There's too many men out here who aren't serious. Okay. Relationships are for me. It looks like God is just not wanting me to be married and have a relationship. So I just need to accept the fate and move on. Okay. That I'm not worthy of love. I'm not available for love. No one will ever love me. And all this guilt and shame is just reaffirmed in us. Okay. It clearly exposes, okay, the positioning that we stay at. And truth is that the difference between both people isn't the breakup. The breakup happened the same exact way, but it was the story that either gave permission for a person to overcome or the permission for someone to stay where they are. Okay. And this is exactly what we want to get at in this entire video that allows us to see the sincerity of becoming secure and seeing the difference between the secure version and the insecure version. Because the secure version, okay, is at the top of this mountain. Not because they're perfect, not because they never have any struggles, not because they never have any emotions, not because they never experience any pain, but because they genuinely are giving themselves permission to experience what the breakup brought without allowing it to cause disruption to who they are and who God's called them to be. And the person that's insecure, well, let's just say that it didn't take much for this person to consistently believe that they are not worthy or available for the love they've always wanted. And now they now believe that they're the worst ever. They're ugly. Love is never finding them. It's too late. I'm never enough. And they'll stay at these places of shame and guilt as identity levels that keeps them in this insecure pocket, unavailable for the love they really want. Okay. And this is really, really the biggest thing that I want you to understand this is that security was never a promise that you won't feel lost. It's a promise that the loss doesn't get to tell you your worth. Both people experienced a loss, but it was the story that made the difference. Okay. And so truth is that you've probably already looked up some of this stuff. Okay. The attachment styles, the avoidant attachment, all the things, what was happening, what was the dynamic, what was this person closely leaning to that maybe gives me an answer as to why they're behaving this way. And maybe it helps me determine how bad I should feel or if I should let it go. Okay. And you probably could even explain your own attachment style better than most people who've been in therapy for it. Okay. It's not about him on an intellectual level. Okay. But you're still checking the Instagram. You're still trying to follow up. You're still breaking no contact. Right. And that's not a failure on your part. It's just proof that knowledge was never going to be the thing that actually rescued you through this. Right. Because obviously, logically, it doesn't make sense to keep going back after somebody who keeps breaking your heart, breaking your trust, or who doesn't want to spend time and attention into you because you clearly see it. But yet there's a difference between knowing it and actually embodying it through our behaviors, through our actions, and living in alignment. Understanding your patterns is step one, but it's not the cure. And what actually changes a nervous system, a belief, and identity isn't new relation or isn't new information. Okay. It's repeated new experiences that gives you the ability to repetitively experience yourself in a new light. Okay. And so this is now what shifts us into the framework that allows you to become the person that's at the top of the mountain. Okay. I know this is messy, but you can see it. Instead of staying at this low level place at the bottom of the mountain. Okay. It actually gives you the ability to make your way up. All right. And we're going to break down this framework. And of course, as I told you in the beginning, actually show you what it looks like to get to moving on, right? Because again, it's not really what you're after. There's a big one, there's a big thing that you're actually looking for that's going to explain this a lot more. All right. And so as we start our descent, all right, the framework that we really have to apply when it comes to building this sense of healthiness, of recovery, and moving on, letting go, and becoming available for the abundant love you know you have room to create in your life. All right. It's going to start with the first R to this framework, which is reveal. Okay. We have to be able to reveal the honest truth about where we are. Okay. Before we can even change a pattern, we have to name the exact belief this breakup exposed. Okay. The exact things that this breakup exposed in us that is really, really the challenge. More than the person that left, more about what it exposed. Okay. So it's not necessarily just saying you're sad that they're gone, but underneath that, why? Right? Is it that I have to learn to keep love? I have to learn to keep performing love. Okay. It's not necessarily just because you're sad that they left. No, it's their absence is reflecting something in you that makes you question something deeper about yourself. Am I worth staying for? Is love even something that is allowed to happen in my life because it is something that constantly keeps happening? If I'm unsafe, okay, and do I feel unsafe the moment someone pulls away? Okay. If I'm not chosen, does that mean that I'm not enough? Some level of fear, some level of doubt. Okay. And whatever surfaces that comes up as we're saying this, as you're being honest, it's not a new wound that the breakup gave you. It's just an older wound that the breakup is finally making it impossible to ignore. Okay. I know for me, a lot of the anxious attachment that I experienced has always been there, but it got really loud when I experienced rejections and ghostings, when I was told I was no longer wanted. It's when it got loud. And it's easy to be like, oh, well, they caused it. But in reality, it was a mirror and it exposed that lack that I could no longer ignore. Okay. And so we have to be able to get into this space of revealing. And that's the first step. All right. The second is regulate. Okay. That's the second R. We got 5 R's to this framework. Okay. The first R was reveal. We got to be honest, got to tell the truth. The second R is regulate. And that's kind of getting us to an emotional baseline. All right. Regulation isn't about not feeling emotions. Regulation isn't about dismissing and minimizing emotions. It's about being able to experience an emotional baseline, okay, or returning our emotions to this baseline. And so it's really a form of resiliency, okay, even showing a little bit of capacity. But if we think about our emotions, right, we see how sometimes they fluctuate. All right. Let's say this is more of the positive up top, okay? And you know, these are the happy emotions that kind of float, okay? This is when you feel joyful, grateful, okay? Happy emotions that just kind of swim everywhere in our minds and in our bodies. And then we have those negative emotions: shame, the guilt, the pain, the anxiety, sadness, emptiness, loneliness. Okay. We name it. And regardless of where we are and what day we're having, okay, we know that these emotions fluctuate. We don't always stay in the same state all day, every day, like we may feel. And so it definitely has its moments where it's coming up and it's going down. It's going up and it's going down. Okay. Up and down. Up and down. Right. Kind of flowing and all this. And what is so amazing is what actually breathes the ability to be able to regulate is being able to get to this baseline, right? At some point, I want to be able to not go so far down that I lose sight of life, its value, my existence, or even get so caught up in the feel good that I just dive so far into passionate feelings that I allow myself to, let go, drown in indulgences, to drown in all kinds of pleasures. It's our ability to feel both of those things and come back to this baseline, right? And so it may waver, I may feel a little bit here and there. Okay. But when I'm able to return to this baseline, that's when we know that we're experiencing a form of regulation. Okay. Not that the absence of these emotions, positive or negative, it's our ability to come back to that middle baseline. Okay. And so that regulation is really important because your body doesn't know the difference between heartbreak and danger. Okay. And that's why you feel it physically, the tight chest, the restlessness, the urge to check the page, the urge to reread text messages and re listen to text messages to really see what happened, where it went wrong, revisiting old photos that you never deleted. Okay. All the things that are just showing these urges. Okay. And really trying to gain some sense of control. But the urge isn't weakness, it's just your nervous system trying to cope, right? And trying to self soothe in the only way it currently knows how to. And it gives your body a different way to find safety, naming the sensation instead of acting on it, slowing your breath before you reach the phone, okay? Building a sense of safety in a way that doesn't revolve around the coming back to Him or what you wanted, what you hoped for, the potential that you desired out of this person. Okay. And so we got to be able to learn to regulate. So there's revealing and honesty, regulating, okay, which is being able to get to an emotional baseline or relaxation. Okay. Not absence of emotions, but integration of them. This third R is really important because now we're dealing with the root, right? And the root isn't always about trying to go and digging deep and deep and trying to find beginnings to all the pains, attachment styles, and issues that you experience as much as it is the ability to rebuild. Okay, this is the part where psychology alone and all of this, the terminology that you may learn from psychology can't help you. It's something that psychology can only go so far. Okay, before we actually have to get to a place where we have to really, really dive deep into these identity spaces. Attachment theory, okay, something that we're very familiar in this stage, can tell you why you feel unsafe when someone leaves. Okay, it can explain it pretty well, but it cannot tell you who you are when no one is choosing you. Okay, it can tell you all the tips and tricks and identify the different wounds and why you might behave the way you do, but it doesn't necessarily give you the answer that we're uncovering today when it comes to the root or what's underneath all the pain that you're experiencing and exposed to. Okay, only your design can answer that. Okay. And when we're talking about root and identity, this is where spiritual foundations come into the play. Okay. Because you weren't created to need the approval of other people. You weren't created to need the other approval of men, your parents, your family, previous generations. Okay. You weren't created to perform for value. You were created to live from a place of value. Right. And when we get to this place of living from a place of value, all of a sudden a lot of our life changes. Instead of believing we need to reach the top of the mountain, okay, bringing that back up, instead of trying to believe we need to reach this peak, okay, if that's marriage, okay, let's say this is your cape right there. It's kind of a weird cape, but you get it, okay. And let's say the peak here was marriage, kids, legacy, long-term relationship, the marriage proposal, the wedding. Okay. Instead of believing that we needed to get there to be meaningful, okay, we can actually be way down here at the bottom of the mountain with the same cape, but still feel valuable on our way up the mountain and maybe even our way around it. Right. And this is what gives us the ability to move forward and to find value in where we are instead of believing that our value is only enriched when we get to the top of peaks in life. Okay. Your worth was never his to assign. And it isn't his to take with him when he goes. It's an important place that you got to understand. Identity on being chosen will always be one rejection away from collapse, but identity built in Christ isn't. And that's why our root and our spiritual foundation is massive. Not to just add Jesus glitter to our pain, but to really address it from core wounds and to be able to tangibly apply the value of this identity that we have in us. Okay. which then allows us to achieve these two that I'm going to combine once we get to the root. Okay. Because when we deal with the root, our lives just change. Everything around us is the big domino effect that allows so much of other things to fall into place. Okay. We experience this form of relation. Okay. And remaining. Okay. These are the last two R's. Okay. So remember, we have 5 R's. We had reveal, regulate. Okay. We had root, now relation and remaining. Okay. And in this framework of relation, okay, this shows up in what happens next. Okay. This is kind of often what we might say also to repairing. Okay. But it's not necessarily from a direction of eventually or moving from a place of hoping. It's actually experiencing now. Okay. The boundaries we may need to set. And not just setting new boundaries and having another checklist to follow and then create more shame and guilt because we don't follow it, but actually being curious enough to the identity that gives us permission to move those boundaries to the side and tangibly creating what works so we can move forward. Okay. It's not about performing to be kept, auditioning for another relationship to any capacity. Okay. It's learning how to actually receive care instead of earning it. And there's so many ways that we're going to go into this journey together as we come to the end and descend this plane that gives us the ability to rebuild this healthily. Okay. And then when it comes to remain, it's about building momentum because at this point, now that you've gotten through the 4 R's, we've arrived at a healthier layer of security because security isn't a moment that you just arrive at once and then all of a sudden everything goes back to what it should be. Life just should be flowing. It should be easy. No, no, no. Security is a rhythm that anchors you daily and keeps you connected to who you are, regardless of your relationship status, regardless of whether or not marriage comes now or later. It's not something that you just arrive to. It's something that you practice. It's something that you build a rhythm with, and it's something that you continue to show maintenance towards. Okay. Not because you arrive, but because you keep simply returning. So, what are we ending with here? Now that we've had the framework and we've landed the plane, I told you before that you weren't really looking to move on, right? And we've explained, hopefully, really well that, even though you came here hoping you found the cheat code to move on, right? Really, what we found was that we needed to address what starts with a B. And you might have already guessed it because we've said it a lot in this time together, okay? But what we have to do is address the belief. Okay. We have to address the belief because, as we exposed earlier, two people with the same experience have different results. And it's not to minimize the pain you're experiencing because it is heavy. But if we engage with this moment with curiosity and being curious to press in on what the beliefs are that are being exposed from this loss, this is now where we get to create the change we've been chasing and clinging to the person that left for, the answers for, the clarity calls for, needing to know why for. It's what gives us the ability to move forward. Okay, if I were to put this in one last analogy, all right, I want you to envision that this is, a nice little iceberg. All right, kind of a weird iceberg there. All right. And what we recognize, though, right, is that in every iceberg, under the water, we only see the top, right? We only see the top layer here. And that's typically what you're seeing currently. Okay. This is the sadness. These are the tears. Okay. It's the lack of eating, the poor diet. Okay. Maybe it's the chest pains. Okay. Your chest really hurts. Sometimes you feel like it's hard to breathe. Okay. It has a rock on your chest that's really hard to lift. Okay. And this is the stuff that we see on the surface. And really, what we have to understand is at the core, what's fueling all of these pains that are showing up above the surface, that are bubbling up for us to see. It's the beliefs, the stories, okay, the meanings that we've attributed to the experience that is actually perpetuating the emotions that we feel like are overtaking us. And if we start dealing with these beliefs and stories, not just about the relationship, but about who you are, about what makes you valuable, about what makes you amazing, about what makes you who you are, now we actually are now creating change. right? And more importantly, opening the door to becoming secure. Okay. Secure in who you are, not to be absent of emotions, but to be able to ride these emotions in such a healthy way that even in loss, you're not questioning who you are, abandoning who you are, doubting who you are, but you're resting in who you are. Okay. And so security was never going to mean that this doesn't hurt. And I hope that's one of your biggest takeaways from this entire conversation that we've shared. It just means that hurt doesn't get the final word on who you are. And when we see pain through the lens of purpose, this is what gives us the ability to move forward instead of stay stuck in repetitive loops as if nothing else could actually be helpful. It means that hurt doesn't get the final word on who you are. And you're allowed to grieve him. You're allowed to grieve him. You are not required to lose yourself to do it. Okay. And so if you've made it this far, I want to first thank you so much for giving me the time and privilege to pour into you and to really break down some of these frameworks that I think could easily be the beginning of something new and transformative to the life that is in front of you. Okay. And if you listen to all of this and thought you understand it, but you don't exactly know how to do it, okay, it makes sense. You broke it down. I see it plain as day, not just in my relationships, but in so many other areas of my life. What do I need to do about it? Okay. This is exactly why becoming secure exists. Okay. This is exactly why my program exists. This is exactly why my community exists, to give you step by step tangible results, tangible measurements where you're not guessing your healing, you're not bumping your head through the direction of healing, but with someone holding your hand in the process, giving you what you need to not only overcome the breakup, but so you can become available for the right love from the right person to experience the relationship you know you have in you to have, to create from a place of abundance, not from lack, from a place of fullness, peace, victory, and not performing for it. Okay. It's not another explanation of attachment theory. It's not another explanation of therapeutic language. Okay. It's literally practice through the path of the 5 R's that we've just broken down. Okay. Let's revisit them: reveal, regulate, okay, root. Oh, my screen here. All right. But let's revisit them. Okay. This is the framework that we just broke down. Right. All right. So we got the 5 R's. Okay. We got regulate. They're not in this order. All right. Root. Okay. We have reveal, remain, and we have the last one, which you guessed it, is relate. I almost forgot it, but you guessed it. Relation. Okay. And so this 5 path fold that is presented in front of us, okay, this 5 step direction, this whatever you want to call it, okay, it's a practice path and it's built specifically for where you are right now. Okay. And so what you're going to do is you're going to click the link in the description. All right. And there in that link in the description, you're going to click becoming-secure.com. All right. And that is where you are going to click enter relationship portal. All right. Making sure I can fit this in my screen. You're going to click the enter relationship portal and you're going to take a relationship quiz. Okay. This is going to be your first step. It's going to literally get you to the place to take the first step in the 5 R's, and that is reveal. Okay. I know I wrote them out in the wrong order there, but if you've been walking through this whole time, it's going to literally begin you with the step of reveal. Okay. And that's just simply getting to the truth of what we see, what we feel, what we're experiencing, and where we are. Okay. Honesty about who we are, where we are, and what we're doing at any given moment, even right now. All right. And then you're going to finish that. You're going to get your free relational diagnostic. And then you're going to click book qualification call. All right. And then that is what is going to simply give the last few questions to qualify you for a potential spot in my coaching program. Okay. That does have limited seating. All right. But we do have open seating. Okay. Regularly. All right. So even if you don't necessarily meet the criteria, or you do, but you end up on the, wait list of some sort. Okay. That's still something that's beneficial. But because as you're currently seeing this, is a great chance that the spots are open. Okay, so you probably won't end up on a wait list if you qualify. Okay, you'll actually get a free qualification call with me to further look at what it looks like to get you involved and get you onboarded, get you moving forward. Okay, but you're going to book your qualification call, answer those next questions honestly, and then be able to schedule the call that makes the most sense for you in the time frame that makes sense for you. Okay, and I'm excited to see you on the other side, to work together and to get you your spark back that starts at an identity level, building you to a place of security, overcoming the breakup, not allowing the person that hurt you to define you, so you can get the love you've always been wanting and the peace that's been missing back and restored to you. Okay? Subscribe, turn on your post notifications, click the link in the description, or DM me on Instagram secure. Okay. And we can get the conversation going there. And I'm excited to see you on the other side. Peace.